It is imperative to the long-term survival of our republic that we vigorously guard our Constitution. For we, the people, have regrettably become complacent over the past many decades, maybe even a century. We have not acted properly as designed as the fourth, some may say fifth, branch of government, and the other three branches have taken notice. We must recognize that our Constitution is not a self-enforcing document. Over time, if one or more of the branches neglects its responsibility of being guardians of the Constitution, we find ourselves in a perpetual breaking down of the limitations defined in our charter document. This situation, it's the root of the problem that results in almost insurmountable challenges that we face today. As we get into our show today, we'll focus on addressing one area of these challenges, as mentioned, which is the unbelievably broken entitlement programs. And we'll also discuss how this hits us at a local level with decreasing state revenues, resulting in needs to cut programs in the local school systems. But it's important to understand the nature of how we've gotten here. We as a people, our educational system, the court system, and our elected officials have all justified extra constitutional legislation little by little over the years, and in many cases, we've outright redefined the meaning and purpose of sections of the Constitution, and even the document as a whole. It is our responsibility, we the people, it is our responsibility to demand that our elected officials stay true to the oath taken in which they solemnly swore to support and defend the Constitution, regardless of the situation. It is our elected officials' responsibility, whether on the floor of the Senate or House or at a campaign event, to not just talk about supporting the Constitution, but for he or she to vote only on legislation which the Constitution provides them the authority to do so. Because that authority is all that we, the people, have consented to in our Constitution. Not one bit less and not one bit more. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. But when an elected official chooses to not stay principled and instead take a pragmatic approach, it means that he or she, however small, is partaking in the chipping away at our constitutional republic. At the end of the day, the Constitution is what sets us apart from so many other nations that have come and gone over the years. When a politician makes the choice to take part in the eroding of our most important framework, he or she has positioned themselves on a very slippery slope. Furthermore, they have then compromised themselves, where they can no longer take a principled position to fight for our liberties and freedoms without being tainted by their contradictory votes. For when Congress once begins to stretch its power beyond the limits of the Constitution, there is no limit to it and no security for the people. Simply stated, we either stand for the Constitution or we don't. Remember that everyone in the military also swears an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Let me ask you, what if we were to ask military officers to uphold their oath, let's say 9 out of every 10 times? And as long as they did that, we'd look the other way that 10th time and simply justify it that they're good officers for the most part. Would you be okay with that? Well, I sure wouldn't. The importance of holding the officers to their oath is just as important as it is with our elected officials. As the proverb goes, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. It would be inaccurate to think our goal is to weaken candidates or our elected officials. It is our civic duty and must be our mission as guardians of the Constitution to make sure these men and women keep their oath, as their primary purpose for service is to protect our freedoms and liberties granted to us by our Creator, not by our government. As Samuel Adams said so many years ago, it does not require a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen to set brush fires in people's minds. It's our part to do this. Now, I'd like to speak directly to all of our elected officials humbly on behalf of all citizens determined to do our part in supporting and defending the Constitution. To our elected officials, we will respectfully afford you the very same opportunity as it goes in the story. You may play the role of Colonel Davy Crockett, and we are the simple Horatio Bunce. If you acknowledge your past extra-constitutional votes and give your word to never again stray from the Constitution as the founders intended, which you are very familiar with, we will not only vote for you, but we will gather in large groups for you to address. We will become your most ardent supporters, and no one will hear us talk about politics without mentioning your courage and your fortitude, and that you vigorously support the United States Constitution at all times. This is the fight we're in. The Constitution is the document that limits the power of our federal government. And it also shares with us, through the amendments, 9th and 10th specifically, what powers are left to the states, the sovereign states, and their people. It would be wise of us to no longer be complacent, to stand up for our rights that are self-evident, given to us by our Creator, not our government, and to push back on the federal government that is usurping authority and centralizing power that they don't have. And we, the people, didn't consent to it.
Yeah, this is a good reminder as you went through this morning, this afternoon, Joshua, that our real battle isn't over these particular policies, though they get expressed in some of these policies that are out there, namely right now health care. But fundamentally the issue, as we've talked about many times on the air before, is whether or not we are a country governed by the Constitution or are we a country that is governed by case law. Now, one has self-evident truth attached to it, the Constitution, as it folded out from the Declaration of Independence. The other one are really arbitrary laws that are opined upon by 9 judges, in some cases different numbers of judges. And so what type of country do we want to become? Do we want to become a country that is largely governed by the rule of men, i.e. the 9 justices on the Supreme Court, or do we want to be a country that is governed by our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States? They flow from one another. Many of the same people that were involved in the Declaration of Independence were as involved in the Constitution. So it's hard to divorce that they didn't still hold those ideas when they got to the Constitution, just because it was written many years after the Declaration of Independence. Nevertheless, we're at this critical juncture in our country where are we going to be governed by those documents, or are we going to be judged and governed by men? My fear is, because we have not been a good fourth or fifth estate, we've not done our job as citizens to push back on these guys. We've not asked the tough questions of our legislators. Instead, we say, oh, they're generally okay. They're generally good guys, and so we're not going to ask the tough questions. Well, folks, that time has got to come to an end, because if it doesn't come to an end, these guys have marched us to the precipice, and the cliff we're staring over right now is a pretty big fall. And I don't think we're all coming to grips with this still, even after all the calamitous events of 2009 and the end of 2008. We all want to get back to normal, and I understand that desire, but things have changed. Everything has changed. And we're going to talk about some of that in the next segment when we get to entitlement programs, both at the state and the federal level, and how gloomy the future looks there. But right now, folks, we are marching. They are marching us to the cliff. We, the people, have got to take a stand at this point. We, the people, have got to start asking our legislators the tough questions and say, exactly as Joshua was just describing in his monologue, are you going to be 100% for the Constitution as it was written by the founders in 1787 and amended through the Bill of Rights? Are you going to be that person? Or are you going to be the person that says, well, most of the time I'll do that, but every now and then I'm going to vote extra constitutionally? We cannot survive that way, folks. That's why we are in the incredible mess we're in now.